Welcome to our channel. Today, we're sharing some seriously spooky stories in our series on the creepiest and most unsettling tales. So, dim the lights and join us for a journey into the unknown. Don't forget to subscribe for more chilling content. I'm a hardcore skeptic and devout atheist. I'm the first person to call BS on any spooky stories, and yet I have one of my own. We bought this old 1914 house in Missouri. Old crackety floors, original iron door handles. Anyway, my wife is at work, and I venture into the creepy basement to clean it out and get out some old relics from the house. Floors are shit and paper thin. I have my computer's surround sound hooked up and blasting some heavy metal while I clean up down there. There is a dark, ominous crawl space down there full of trash bags. I was reluctant to start opening up because my lonesome imagination started to think that there were dead bodies in there. I start to venture closer to the crawl space, and the music that is playing on my computer via playlist.com starts to skip like a badly scratched CD. I was so petrified by my computer skipping like this that I quickly ran up the stairs and turned off my computer. I have never heard or seen of any instance of music skipping on a person's computer, unless it was some random form of internet interruption. As big a skeptic as I am, it gave me the chills. More than a few years ago, my friend and I were hanging out and thought it would be a great idea to go and explore the construction site near his house, where new houses were being built at night. Being teenagers at the time, we thought this was a great idea and were soon walking towards one of the half-built houses. By the time we walked up and could see into the top window, we saw a faint light in what I imagine was the attic. At first, we were pretty frightened, but we brushed it off as a reflection of the nearby street lamp. We continued to the other houses, forcing each other to peer through the pitch-black windows and doors with a flashlight to see if anyone was in the empty houses. Walking back with a bit of an adrenaline rush, we looked back through the window, and the light was gone. After going through the other houses, we weren't as scared to go close to this one since nothing bad happened the other times. However, upon going into the vacant garage, we heard slow and steady footsteps coming from above us and a very loud and solid thump, like someone fell over. We both booked the fuck out of there, and once we were a safe distance away, we peered through the window again and saw the shadow of a large man. We then proceeded to SHT our pants and run as fast as our 15-year-old legs could take us. We never went back to those houses, and I guess I'll never know what the fuck that loud thump was. I used to work as a night watchman on a large property that was somewhat secluded but still in a bad area. It had a long, gated driveway. One night, while starting my rounds, I walked out of the lighted front entrance, and as soon as I did, I heard a woman's voice scream, "Oh my God, somebody, please help me." It came from all the way down at the end of the driveway. I automatically took maybe 5 running steps towards the driveway and then skidded to a stop, turned around, ran back inside the building, and called the cops. 4 cop cars and a police helicopter showed up, but they found nothing. I still don't know what's going on. I found it odd that it happened right after I stepped outside the building. Maybe someone was trying to lure me out there. About a year ago, I borrowed my dad's truck and went camping with some friends. We didn't pack up and leave until midday, so I wasn't going to get back to the city until well past midnight. I had to fuel up, so I pulled into a gas station in the middle of nowhere. As I pulled in, I noticed another truck at the pumps and people looking out of the windows. It was a little strange because they were just standing there staring as I fueled up, and then one of them, a woman, started pounding on the window. I finish and go in, and she asks me if it is still out there. I thought she was talking about a bear, then the attendant yelled, "There it is." I looked out there, and under the truck was this pale, naked, childlike thing. It was kind of yellowish with blue bruises, it's the best I can describe. It had a large head, not like alien large, but just too big. It was lying on its stomach, bobbing its head like an infant that couldn't support itself. I was fucking freaked out. I was just outside with that thing. I wanted to run to my truck and get the hell out of there, but it was underneath it. I asked if we should call the cops, but the attendant said the sheriff's department was on its way. They told me it just showed up. It stayed there for about 30 minutes. Then it dragged itself into the woods, fucking trembling and weakly bobbing its head. I never ran so goddamn fast when I charged the truck. Fuck the Northwoods, I haven't gone camping since. I've suffered from insomnia my entire life, which began in the summer before 2nd grade. It was in the spring, and I was laying in bed watching a movie on a small TV my parents had gotten for my nightstand. It was about 5:15 a.m. when all of a sudden all of the sound around me started to slowly fade out, like someone turning the volume down on the radio, until there was nothing but silence. As I was reaching for the TV to turn up the volume, I thought something had gone wrong with the TV. I was overwhelmed by complete euphoria. It was the most tranquil, peaceful feeling I had ever experienced. The first thought that popped into my head was, I am dying. I am dying, but it's okay. The only rational explanation was that I was dying, but I was so overwhelmed with peace that I turned over in bed to accept my fate. Keep in mind that I was a second grader, and this should not have been my thought process, I just knew. That's when I saw it, a bright, glowing white figure in my doorway. My brother's room was across the hall, so I called out his name, telling myself it was him, but nothing happened. The figure glided to the end of the bed, and suddenly, in the tranquility, I began to feel panic because I knew something wasn't right, but I just felt so peaceful that I couldn't break out of the trance-like state I was in. The figure hovered by the side of my bed and stayed with me for what felt like forever. Suddenly there was a flash, and all the sound came back, and the feeling of peace went away. My reaction to this was that, in the actual fuck, I just saw a ghost, so I ran across the hall and dove into my brother's bed. I was hysterical and just kept crying because I saw a ghost. My brother was freaked out, and we hid under the covers, and he did the best he could to try and calm me down. Suddenly the phone began to ring, and ring, and ring, and ring. We both froze in fear, then again it rang, and rang, and rang. I peeked out of the covers and saw the bright green numbers on his clock read 5:30. We turned every light in the house on and started watching cartoons. My mom woke up at 6 and was livid that we were up so early. Josh was defending me when I kept telling her there was a ghost. She got upset and started telling me I had a wild imagination, and then I just yelled, the phone rang, the clock said 5:30, and the phone rang. It was the ghost, go check the phone, it was the ghost. She checked the phone and went to the other room, only to tell me it was a telemarketer. I was so scared that I wouldn't even go get socks out of my dresser, but suddenly she was understanding and no longer angry. It was my brother's birthday that day, so I figured she was just trying to let it go. The next day I got home from school, and she told me to come sit on the couch with her, where she put me in her arms. She said, I'm going to tell you something, but I don't want you to get upset, okay? Yeah, I obliged. Your grandma passed away at 5:30 the other night. That was just her coming to tell you how much she loved you before she left. To this day, I still get chills thinking about it. Not creepy chills, it was just this really surreal experience. This happened at a party at my house. My friend's then girlfriend invited a new girl we had never met before. This girl gave me creepy vibes when she came in, although I couldn't quite tell why. She is, however, quite an unpleasant bitch, so we all tried to ignore her drunken nonsense while trying to have a good time. The girl kept saying she's deeply religious and always wears this sinister-looking black rosary that she never takes off or that bad things might happen. Halfway through the party, she passed out drunk. No big deal. My buddy's girlfriend carried her to a guest bedroom and let her sleep on the bed. We resumed our debauchery until around 2 a.m., when we suddenly heard this bloody scream from the bedroom. Me and my friends went to check on her, and we saw the girl crawled out of the room on all fours, grudge style, and talked gibberish in a deep, raspy man's voice. Her limbs were twitchy, and her eyes were all black. We were creeped the fuck out and asked her if she was feeling alright. The girl fucking stood up, looked me dead in the eye, and charged at me. Out of reflex, I pushed her away and noticed that she was a lot heavier than she looked. She fucking launched herself onto another guy and started decking him. Luckily, before she could do some serious damage, me and my friends grappled with her and held her down on the couch. She was about 5 feet 5 inches, but fucking took 3 men to restrain her. Did I mention that this whole time she was yabbling in some language I had never heard before in an obviously man's voice? Now, still drunk and very much creeped out, my buddies and I assessed the situation. We have a crazy girl who seemed to be possessed by some Eastern European ghost who wanted to murder our asses. We couldn't call the cops because we were drinking underage. We couldn't call her friends to pick her up because no one knew this girl except my friend's girlfriend, who was very disturbed by the whole ordeal and was praying silently in the other room. In a drunken stupor, I told my buddies the only logical choice at the time: we knocked her the fuck out, and hopefully when she wakes up, she will be herself again. I went to the kitchen and grabbed my mom's trusted frying pan and wrapped a towel around it. I slowly walked to the girl and, as she stared at me with her pitch black eyes, bash her in the head with my mom's frying pan, MLB style. A muffled BMHP later, she was sleeping soundly on the couch. My friend's girlfriend somehow found the obsidian rosary Crazy was wearing and put it on Crazy. It seemed like the rosary fell off her neck when she passed out earlier. At this point, we were relieved, but no one was in the mood to party anymore. We stayed beside her wearily until dawn and wouldn't dare take our eyes off her. The next morning, when she woke up, she returned to her bitchy self. Beside her new headache, she had otherwise no recollection of last night. She called a cab, and that was the last time we ever saw her again. When I was a little kid, about 12, we lived in this house in upstate New York. It was a really beautiful home with a big backyard. Wonderful. Me and my sister had a kick-ass tree house and slide and swing set in our backyard. It was great. However, after about a year of living there, weird SHT started to happen. It started out small. I came home to open cabinets and drawers all the time when no one was in the house. We thought we had been robbed, but nothing was taken. Our dog would just stare at nothing and growl all the time. Started becoming aggressive. She was the sweetest. But she bit my sister during one of her fits, and we had to have her put down since my sister had to get a bunch of stitches for it. But one day, it escalated. I was home alone with my sister when there was a knock at the door. Now my mom told me to never answer the door when she wasn't home unless it was a police officer or one of my parents. But for some reason, I just felt really compelled to see who this was, as their knocking was rapid and getting louder. It sounds like some sort of emergency. When I opened the door, there was an older man standing there. Probably late 50s or early 60s. Anyway, when I opened the door, this man stared angrily at me. He was dressed in black pants, a white shirt, a black church jacket, and a black cowboy hat. "I saw you take it," he said to me. Now I didn't know what he was talking about, but I knew I wanted nothing to do with it. I said, "Mister, I didn't take anything that wasn't mine, ever. I saw you take it, you little lying thief. Now give it back or you'll regret it." I still had no idea what he was talking about, so I slammed the door and locked it, not wanting to get in trouble. I immediately ran to the back door in the kitchen and locked it too. I heard a scream after that. It was as if someone had just been stabbed repeatedly. I will never forget that. But as soon as I heard that scream, a dish came flying by my head and smashed against the wall. My sister, who was napping at the time, started crying. She was 9. I grabbed the phone and called my dad, crying, saying some scary old man was trying to get in the house. He told me to lock all the doors and windows and call the cops, and he would be home soon. The police came and searched around, but it was to no avail. They didn't find any evidence or witnesses. Later that week, while getting ready for bed, I was brushing my teeth in the bathroom. I went to spit, and when I looked in the mirror above the sink, I just barely saw the same old man walking past the bathroom door, holding a knife. I screamed bloody murder, and my parents came running in. I was yelling that the scary man was in our house with a knife. My dad got his gun and searched around the house, but he didn't find anyone or anything out of the ordinary. But he stayed up all night in his armchair, his gun on his lap the whole night. I was home alone again sometime after that, just wandering around the house, when I found a crawl space in my closet I didn't know about. So I obviously opened it up, and inside was a small box. When I pulled the box out and opened it, inside was a black cowboy hat. The same hat that the scary man was wearing. There were also a few photo albums, and when I flipped through them, the old man was in most of the pictures. I took one of the photos out and put it in the drawer on my bedside table. The picture was of the old man, a woman, and 2 boys. It was really old. Like black and white. I put the stuff back in the box and put the box back in the crawl space. Later that night, before going to bed, I looked out my bedroom window and into my backyard, where I saw the old man standing there. Holding a knife again. I retreated under my covers. Scares. I didn't understand why I was the only one who saw him, but the rest of my family was beginning to suspect that I was losing it. Well, I opened my drawer and pulled out the photo. The old man was gone in the photo, though. I started to cry. What was happening? I didn't know. I put the photo back and hid under my covers the whole night, unable to sleep. I didn't stay home alone much after that. But one day I got home from school before my mom got back with my sister. The middle school I went to was within walking distance, unlike the elementary school that she went to, and I immediately felt the hair on the back of my neck stand up. It didn't feel right. So I ran upstairs, opened my drawer, and grabbed the photo. Everyone in the picture was gone this time except for the older man, who was standing there with this weird grin on his face now. One that wasn't there before. That's when I heard an extremely loud thud and a scream once more. I immediately panicked and ran downstairs. I heard a scream again. Only this time it was a male. Then another. Also male. It was coming from the basement. Against my better judgment, I decided to investigate it. I was still holding the photo, and when I looked at it, there was no one in it now. Not even the old man. My stomach started churning, but I went down anyway. I wish I hadn't. When I got down there, the smell of rotting meat immediately hit me. I looked around the corner of the stairs after descending and immediately regretted everything I was doing. There were 3 bodies there. All are bleeding profusely. The 2 boys and the woman. All of them had multiple stab wounds in their stomachs, chests, and necks. I wanted to throw up. In fact, I did just that. That's when I heard what sounded like something falling over from upstairs. When I got up there, I saw the old man hanging by his neck from the top of the stairwell that went to the 2nd floor of my home. I screamed and went running out of my house and into my front lawn, where my mom was just pulling up. I was ecstatic. I was screaming and crying, trying to tell her what happened, but I couldn't get the words out. I was so scared. When we went back into the house, there was nothing there. Nothing at all. No man is hanging. No one was in the basement. I pulled the photo out of my pocket, and everyone was there again, smiling and looking happy. Just like it did before. When my dad got home, I showed him the crawl space and the box with the nice cowboy hat in it. He took the stuff immediately and put it in his closet, out of my reach. I didn't tell him about the photo I had, though. I kept that one a secret. It was as if it were calling to me to not get rid of it. About a week later, my dad started wearing the hat all the time, thinking it was really cool. Regardless of how upset he was, wearing it made me feel. Every time he wore it, he always seemed to be in some sort of bad mood. He started cleaning his gun a lot, too. One morning I woke up, and I don't know why, but I was compelled to look at the photo. I opened my drawer, and my heart stopped. The old man was gone again. I panicked and ran out of my room and downstairs. Where I saw it. My sister and my mother were lying dead in the kitchen. A large steak knife was sticking out of my little sister's chest. I'll never forget the dead look in her eyes and that awful face she was making. I ran out the back door, trying to escape this nightmare, when I tripped over something. Turning over on the ground, I looked to see what I fell over. It was my dad. His skull exploded all over the back of the house. His gun lies next to his dead body. He was wearing the hat. This is more my dad's story than mine. He used to tell me a story about his grandfather living in a house in northern New Hampshire, and the door to the cellar would open at various times on its own. In the spring, his grandfather went into the cellar to create a cold room for veggies to be stored in over the winter. He noticed one of the cellar walls had collapsed, a stone, and went to repair it. After removing a few stones, he found a woman's shoe that was attached to a leg bone, which continued to become a whole skeleton. He said it must have been a ghost that was opening the door, and it was left at that. As I got older, I figured he was just trying to scare me. After he passed away 6 years ago, I found among his things a newspaper article recording this event of finding the skeleton. It was during the turn of the century, from the 1800s to the 1900s. It seems his grandfather went to seek help. They wended their way through the woods, and after removing the skeleton, the daughter was able to identify her mother from the clothes she was wearing. The daughter had assumed she had taken off west with a man. Edit to say, I researched the names in the article, and they were real people. I keep saying that I want to travel up to the town and research it more, but it is such a small town that I doubt I even have the articles on a fetch, SP? machine. I got the shivers after reading the article. I still have it somewhere. I should try to find it and scan it. It is different, as they were so dramatic back then. Being American Indian, my family has a lot of stories about supernatural stuff. One of these is the obvious Skinwalker, which is said to appear if you even dare to discuss it. So I went online and read some experiences people had with that kind of thing and came across a pretty scary story. Some guy and his friends had a 3-day weekend, so they drove out to an old mission in California and saw some creepy stuff skulking around the place. Clothes, skeletal bits, and paintings are on the wall. When they left, they began to joke that they should drive faster before they got shot with an arrow or anything, and one of them began to explain the concept of skinwalkers, and among all the bullshitting, the driver hit a coyote but said it looked too big to be one. They got out to find nothing anywhere near the car or under it, so they got in and kept driving, and as they drove away, they saw behind them a coyote-looking figure only about the size of or bigger than a man walking over the ridge on its hind legs. When I was a kid, I went to a small elementary school in Los Angeles. In an area most people outside of LA would call ghetto. It's not, but whatever. One of the main rooms where we all learned or played had a huge window. It was a wall-to-wall, floor-to-ceiling window. Across the street was a building that I don't remember anyone ever walking in or out of, and next to it was a liquor store. One day, me, 7 or 8, my younger sister, 5 or 6, and a room full of children were playing around. I was playing marbles or pogs, I sincerely can't remember. I looked up from my game and saw a guy walking with a girl, and another girl was quickly approaching them. I couldn't make out what they were saying, But you could see the anger from the woman, who was alone, being directed at the man and woman walking together. I'm not sure what words were exchanged, but the man waved her off and attempted to continue walking. The girl stopped him from moving on and then struck him. He pulled out a gun and blew the back of her head out. It was the first time I saw someone killed. Unfortunately, it wasn't the last. The teachers swarmed into the room and put us all on the floor. But I couldn't stop seeing it. Over and over. The back of her head was exploding and becoming red, something I'd never seen. Her body fell to the floor. The guy is running away. The other girl looked like she was screaming. It was surreal. I'll be the first to say that all this stuff could have taken place in my head. The mind is a freaky thing and can play some pretty trippy tricks on you. Sorry for the length. Whenever I was scared as a kid, my dad had always told me that in life, you should not be scared of ghosts. Fear the living because they can actually hurt you. In my late teenage years, I came into some money after my father committed suicide, and I received an inheritance from him. At the time of my dad's passing, he and my mom owned a cabin up in Oregon by Mount Bachelor. The cabin had been put up for sale since my mom could no longer afford the payments, and renting it out was not covering the payments either. The cabin was set to go on the market for sale in less than a month and was in the process of finalizing all the paperwork with the realtor and lawyer. So for that month's time, the cabin was not going to be rented out any longer and was going to be vacant. I saw this as a chance to get some peace for a while and clear my head in light of all the things going on. I quit work, packed up my snowboarding gear, grabbed my dog, and headed up in my dad's car that he had willed to me, to the cabin. This was our family cabin that my parents rented out throughout the year when we were not using it. I had keys to the cabin and also had the code for the alarms, so I did not feel the need to stop at the rental management company and advise them of my stay. This has nothing to do with the coming story, but I felt the need to mention it anyway. My first 2 days at the cabin were normal, and nothing out of the ordinary happened. I spent my days playing with my dog in the snow, snowboarding, and the evenings playing PlayStation or listening to music, drinking, and smoking out on the balcony. I had already stocked up on food, cigarettes, and liquor, so I was pretty much a shut-in aside from the occasional outing to hit the slopes. With my dog as company and DVDs and PlayStation as entertainment, I was quite content and started to feel relaxed after all the drama that had preceded my outing. The cabin itself was 2 stories. The bottom story had the living room and a side guest bedroom, along with a small kitchen. Upstairs had another 2 rooms, along with a walkout balcony attached to the master bedroom. Most of my time there was spent either in the living room, kitchen, or master bedroom. I never ventured into the other rooms and always kept the doors leading into them shut. Opening doors to dark rooms always creeped me out. Anyhow, the 3rd day came around, and I was going through my usual routine of playing with my dog. His name was Midnight, by the way, and he has also since passed, playing games, and watching DVDs. That day it was pretty heavy snow, so I did not feel like trekking down the hill to the main road in my car and decided to stay in. That's when things started getting a bit weird. In our area, there were only 2 other cabins adjacent to ours, maybe a block away from each other. All the other cabins aside from these 2 were around a mile away from ours. Surrounding us was mostly forest and very tall pine trees. This is important later on. Both of these cabins were empty, and from the past couple of days, I knew that no one was currently staying there. I gave enough background and I'm going to jump to the weirdness. Around midday, while outside with my dog, I noticed what looked like footprints in the snow around the area surrounding our cabin. It was still snowing, so the footprints looked semi-fresh, like someone had been there in the last 20 to 30 minutes before me. I thought that maybe someone was staying in the cabin near me that I may not have noticed. Maybe they were shut in like me. Whatever, the prints led away from my cabin, and they disappeared in the snow towards the denser part of the trees. I disregarded the footprints and went back inside. Nighttime came around, and I decided to head to bed. My dog Midnight was lying on the bed with me when I noticed his ears perk up to a standstill/listening position. This was followed by him quickly jumping off the bed and running downstairs to the living room. I lay in bed and stayed silent. I was kind of freaked out, and could hear him moving around the stairs back and forth. After around 5 minutes, he ran back upstairs to me and started to do his doggy dance for the sign that he had to pee or that he wanted to go outside. Shit, well fine. I couldn't say no to him, so we both went downstairs to the outside driveway for him to do his thing. Only he didn't want to pee. As soon as we were outside, he started to pull on his leash, trying to drag me to where he wanted to go. He kept looking into the dense part of the trees where the prints had been earlier. But he also kept sniffing the side of the house and looking up towards the roof. After he figured out that I was not going to go to where he wanted, he sat himself down and just stared into the darkness. It was a bit unusual for him, but alright, Maybe there are forest animals out there that he wants to chase down. But fuck this. I did not want to chance anything, so I pulled him back inside, and we both headed back upstairs. Around half an hour later, I was lying in bed when I heard what sounded like hooves walking on my roof. It was only a series of around 6 steps, and I rationalized that it could be a pine cone falling from a tree onto the roof or maybe a kind-hearted forest animal running around. But here's the thing, the steps seemed to be spaced apart like a man-length stride. So it was really freaking me out. Midnight also heard the noise and was quick to run to the balcony screen door, expecting me to let him out. Alright, you know what? I'm a tough guy, and at the time, I considered myself to be fairly well built and strong enough to handle myself. So I grabbed my coat and shoes, along with my cigarettes and flashlight, and went out onto the balcony. Fuck it, right? As soon as I was outside, I lit up my cigarette and started canvassing the roof with my light. There was nothing there, and the snow on top was undisturbed. Weird, must have been all my head? What about Midnight hearing the noise? Maybe he was feeding off my fear or paranoia. I started to calm down and relax again. My eyes started to adjust to the darkness, and I kept smoking and just staring at the stars and trees next to our cabin. That's when I saw it. In a tree that was a little taller than our cabin and around 20 feet from the balcony, I saw what looked like a man crouched in a squatting position in between 2 branches. It was squatted on one branch, and its arms were extended above its head, holding onto the branch above it. Fuck me. What the fuck is that? I wasn't sure if I was really seeing this thing, so I just stood there staring and sat there motionless. I noticed Midnight stand up and start pacing behind me and lightly barking at the same time. The thing still did not move. I put my cigarette out and was debating on shining the light in the right direction, but something in my head kept screaming not to. So I walked backwards to the inside of the room and pulled Midnight with me. Once inside, I locked the door and shined the light in the right direction, but there was nothing there. I shut the curtains on the screen door and retreated back to bed. But later on in the night, I heard light tapping at the screen door, like someone was tapping on the glass with their fingers. It was consistent, and it did not stop for nearly an hour. Midnight seemed to stare at the door, but he wouldn't go near it anymore. The weirdest part was that I had a feeling like someone was inviting me to open the door. But at the same time, I kept hearing my dad's voice in my head telling me to stay in bed and not do it. I listened to my dad's voice and just stayed where I was. I passed out eventually and woke up in the morning, and everything was normal. The rest of the week I spent there was non-eventful, and nothing else out of the ordinary happened. I totally admit that it could have been all in my head. A lot of stuff was going on at the time, so I was pretty fucked up from all the drama.